The ocean is an interesting place. It covers more than half of our planet and conceals a completely different world within itself, teeming with life, hiding marvelous secrets that still have yet to be discovered. In fact, we know more about the lunar surface of our friendly, crater-dimpled satellite hundreds of thousands of miles away from us than we do about what lays below the ocean's surface. And this is for good reason, as the harsh depths of the sea make any attempt at exploration an expensive, suffocatingly dangerous venture, yielding no rewards valuable enough to entice anyone, except for those that are truly enamored by the deep blue. There truly is no telling what could be out there, at this very moment while you listen to this story, gliding effortlessly through the pitch-black depths, just waiting for its opportunity to spring on you. And unfortunately for a young man who grew up on the water and loved the ocean, he's about to find out just what hides within the low, ominous murmur of the deep. A constellation of bubbles obstructed his view as he crossed the plane between our world and the unfamiliar blue below. As he sank lower and lower into the abyss, majestically kicking his flippers in perfect form to slow his descent, his view cleared, and he was greeted by the setting he came to love many years ago. The commotion of the lively world above was muted and replaced by a low, undulating growl, and when the bubbles dissipated from around the plastic shield of his goggles, he was rewarded with the sight of a colorful coral reef not much further below, populated by glistening, bustling sea creatures, completely unaware of their unfamiliar guest. And surrounding him in all directions was an encompassing void, comprised of multitudes of shades of blue. He was in love, and he was at peace. As he neared the pale, sandy bottom of the ocean floor, he maneuvered himself onto his stomach, and headed for the multicolored colony ahead to explore. As he curiously investigated the community in front of him, he was at ease. It was as though he were one with the sea, the briny current flowing through him, and for a moment of serene communion, it felt like nothing could change that. Slowly, the murmur of the ocean began to fade, and an eerie silence took its place. He paused from his scan of the reef below and calmly surveyed the never-ending blue around him. He saw nothing, and took a moment to shut his eyes and relax. He would have to go back up for air soon. Suddenly, the presence of a stranger sent a tingle down his spine, awaking him from his reverence. He rapidly turned about himself, swishing around like a sinking top, but he saw nothing. As he returned to his forward-facing posture, he picked out a slender, fast-moving shadow in the distance. He froze, contemplating the identity of the mysterious silhouette, and for a moment, images of sharp teeth and deep, black, unforgiving eyes filled his mind. He jostled himself and thought, no, don't be ridiculous. He had been freediving for years, and had never once encountered anything close to the horrors that Hollywood had cooked up. He tried to push those betraying thoughts out of his mind, when he once again picked out the shadow in the distance, and it was coming straight for him, fast. It was a dolphin. As it effortlessly glided out of the shadows and into his field of view, the black veil concealing its identity was removed, revealing its smooth, silver form, complemented with sharp dorsal and pectoral fins that cut through the water, thanks to the flawless flutter of its tail. Its friendly eyes fixated on him curiously as it circled him, and his brief moment of terror was replaced by relief. And suddenly, the excitement that had had him so captivated had vanished, and the absence of this was filled by a slowly growing burning sensation in his chest. Oh, that's right, he thought to himself. It's been a little while since I breathed last. I should probably change that. After politely paddling his way up past his new friend, he broke the surface of the water, removed the snorkel from his mouth, and took a deep, fresh breath of air. The gentle waves of the sea calmly rocked him to and fro as he smiled to himself, both out of gratitude for the sea breeze and in awe at his encounter. Figures. The one time I didn't bring my GoPro. He scanned the depths below him to try and spot his new companion, but had no luck. After taking a moment to relax and compose himself for the next dive, he took one last breath of air, fitted the snorkel back in his mouth, and sank below once more. After arriving back at the bottom, near the small coral reef that had caught his attention, he looked around, hoping to get another glance at the dolphin, or perhaps even a chance to interact with it a little bit. He had dived with many different sea creatures over the years, including dolphins, but no one ever passes up an opportunity to see one of these marvelous creatures in their natural habitat. He continued to search the blue void around him, but saw nothing. Bummer, he thought. I guess it was just passing through. Without warning, the dolphin reappeared from behind him, and it slowly circled him from an arm's reach away. He flinched in surprise as his nerves acted up again. He fell in love with this feeling, growing up riding the roller coaster on the boardwalk, and soon after starting to free dive at just 14 years old. These little jolts of excitement that sent his nervous system aflutter, the palm-dampening, lighter-than-air feeling of dread that could send shivers down your spine in 100-degree weather. He lived for feelings like this. And the unknown of what's hiding just beyond the curtain of deep blue all around him, and the ever-growing pressure on his body the deeper he went, only pushed him further. To him, the sea was a living, breathing entity that he battled every time he submerged himself in it, as though it were a great worthy foe of his that he had tamed over the course of his life, again and again. Except in this moment, when he locked eyes with this mysterious being, and they each stared into each other's souls, he saw not a friendly duel that he had partaken in throughout his whole life, but something so much more sinister. Nothing. He looked into the dark, beady eyes of the dolphin, and he saw nothing. It was as though the bottle-nosed fiend was looking at the world through two black holes, of which no light could ever escape. He floated, frozen in awe above the sea floor, no longer kicking, gazing at the phenomenon in front of him as it passed behind him again. For a brief moment, all he could see around himself was blue, and the very sounds of the ocean itself had gone mute. Then, he felt a sharp, strong tug from behind him on his snorkel, and before he could even react, the mouthpiece was pulled from his lips. As he shot his head upward in shock, the goggles from his snorkel came free with it, and the entire arrangement was pulled off of his head. He instinctively expelled a small amount of air and began to kick upward, as the dolphin swam away with his snorkel and goggles in its mouth. As he ascended in a hurry, he watched as the dolphin pulled a U-turn and stared at him, with his apparatus in its mouth, as though it were taunting him. He reached the surface once again and screamed for help, hoping a nearby passing boat would hear him. He spun about himself, looking for signs of human life, but saw none. Then, the now all-familiar tug came from his right flipper, and the momentum and strength of it pulled him back under. Salt water rushed into his nostrils and penetrated his eyelids as the dolphin pulled him back down to the bottom by his right foot. He knew if he stayed relatively still, he would be able to conserve his strength and the small amount of air he had collected during his brief surfacing. The fish from Hill dragged him in circles and then in a serpentine pattern as he attempted to calmly reach for the buckle on his foot. The burning sensation in his chest returned as he got close to reaching the clip, but had to settle for grabbing a hold of his shin. He was running out of time. Adrenaline rushed through his veins as he reached again, finally grabbing a hold of his foot, undoing the clip and releasing himself from the bonds of the dolphin's teeth. He kicked with his one good flipper, trying to return to the surface again as he choked on the salt water in the back of his throat. He was within inches of breaking the tide when 4 small daggers sank themselves into his left leg. He let out a screech muffled by the weight of the ocean as he was pulled back down again. His vision began to blur as the force and shock of the silver beast pulling him back down forced any air he had left in his lungs out of his mouth in a cluster of bubbles. The inferno in his lungs was now accompanied by a freezing, jabbing pain in his hands and feet. In a panic, he vainly attempted to flail at the dolphin, using his last ounces of strength to kick and swing at it. But it was no use. His view only deteriorated as he sank to the bottom, now free from the grasp of the fish. He floated, comatose, now in a sense of unreal bliss. The pain in his body faded with his eyesight, and he grew tired, flipping his eyelids for the last time. The final image that crossed his mind as the light left his eyes was not of his killer, but of something beyond anyone he or anyone else could have ever imagined. Something so horrible that the sight of it caused his senses to flare up one last time, giving his heart a horrible jolt before it stopped forever.